Season 1 is all about that dental school student or that new dental school grad or that transitioning dentist, pretty much giving the financial keys to success now that you're in a transition period. So let's go and hop into this episode, and we hope that you enjoy it. If you are listening to this via audio, there is a video format. We actually shoot these live in the studio on video format. You can check those out either on Spotify podcasts, on YouTube podcasts as well. Head to our Team Financials YouTube page. You'll be able to find all of these different podcast shows within the video format, if that's what you choose to do.
Welcome to the Generational Dental Wealth Podcast. My name is Dr. Jermaine Affetti.
My name is Kingsley Affetti, CPA.
We're going to have a fun conversation today. This is probably one of the most impactful conversations, especially when it comes to just understanding how wealth works, how acquisition works, how growth works. Today, we're going to be speaking on compound interest. And more importantly, not just conceptually what compound interest is, but how compound interest affects our life. So today, we're going to be speaking on compound interest and how it affects dental lives.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll hop into it. You realize, we look at our life on a time continuum, and you realize, and you can look back on certain points and identify, this was a time where it kind of set me up for the next time and the next time and the next time. And sometimes we look at life in fragments, man. So I think this episode is really going to help us look at life, not just in fragments and sections, but as a holistic journey, man.
This one's going to be a fun one.
But before we hop into it, man, what do we have going on this weekend? I always like to kind of start with.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure, man. We're going to the state fair, man. So North Carolina has a pretty big state fair that happens in our capital, Raleigh, North Carolina. So that's usually a really, really good time. Yesterday, we had a health fair with the AMPA Association. Shout out to AMPA. That's the American Nigerian Physicians Association. That includes medical doctors, pharmacists, dentists, anybody of Nigerian origin who practices within medicine. So it gives us a good way to be able to create impact on a local level, but as well as a international level. We're already starting to look at the international mission trip in April to Nigeria. Last year, it was in the state of Benin in Nigeria. This year, I believe they've solidified where it's going to be. So it's just an exciting time just to be around so many other medical practitioners. Just be able to learn from them. So one doctor I met in particular, he's a cardiologist here of Nigerian descent. He was the first black cardiologist within Charlotte. Wow. So he ended up forming a group. Him and 3 others, they ended up building up a group of 4 black cardiologists here in Charlotte, North Carolina. They ended up merging with a white group of cardiologists, 8 of them, and they came together and understood the vision on how we can help patients holistically and formed the first interracial cardiology group within Charlotte, North Carolina. They ended up growing that practice from 3 offices and 12 doctors to over 50 doctors in 7 to 8 locations within the Charlotte metro region.
Wow.
From there, they ended up selling to a larger group within Charlotte. Now it's known as Novant Health, but before it was known as something else, and they grew and became the group they were in. And he ended up going back to get his MBA and ended up quitting whole medicine as a whole and moving into more of a higher level, like trying to figure out systemizations within healthcare. So just being able to see how different people move and shake within healthcare and understanding that, you're a practitioner today, you're a frontliner today, but that does not mean that you can't identify an issue within healthcare and find ways to solve it from a global perspective.
I had a good time yesterday as well, man, at the event. So it's going to hop into it, man.
Let's hop into it, man. Yeah. So this is going to be a fun conversation, just really understanding that life has decisions and that every decision compounds, right? Yeah. So for a quick recap of what compound interest is, right? Basically, let's say if someone takes out a loan, and let's say the loan is 5%, right? That means every year you're paying 5% on that loan. What happens is that interest that you're paying, that 5%, right? It can either do one of 2 things. It can either just sit or it can compound, meaning that if you don't pay that interest, you end up paying 5% interest on that 5% interest. It sounds like it's not a big deal, right? But does anybody know who Albert Einstein is?
Yeah.
One of the greatest minds to ever walk this earth. And he was asked about compound interest. And he described compound interest as one of the most powerful forces in this universe. He said, and I quote, "Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. Kingsley, I want you to talk about that statement a little bit because we discussed that one, man. What does that mean to you? He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it when it comes to compound interest.
Man, I think you can be on two sides of the same coin, right? When we're talking about interest, and when we're talking about interest, we're really talking about decisions in life and how compounding those decisions can be at your ultimate for your ultimate goals. How I see that is, when you understand, and you're on the right side of this coin, right? You can use this concept as a way to exponentially grow or exponentially get to where you're trying to get quicker or even achieve better results, right? Because you're using the results of yesterday as a springboard to the results of tomorrow. That's when you understand it. But when you don't understand it, right, and one day you're taking a day off, or the next day you decide you don't want to show up to class, or the next day you say, hey, you know what, I want to go out tonight instead of study. Those same bad results are compounding, right? And since you don't understand this principle or you don't respect this principle, eventually you're going to look back and say, I could have been much more in life if I would have just obeyed this principle, listened to it, and got on the right side of this coin. So that's how I kind of see it, just kind of putting in a life viewpoint.
So I think to myself, what would be the difference between me have gone to dental school in my 20s versus me have gone to dental school in my 40s or 50s?
Yeah.
And I think about that because yes, you can do it. And we have fantastic classmates who are in our program who are in their 40s, right? I just think to myself personally in my life, how would things have changed? And it's highlighted by the compound interest effect. By getting into things earlier or going into things deeper, you have an opportunity to be able to capture a growth of time, right? One thing that is undefeated is father time.
Time, yeah.
That's the one thing we just cannot control. Right?
Yeah.
So believe it or not, there might be a 40-year-old in your class who graduated in your class who might have as long as a career as you. It might be a 10-year career for the both of you. Yeah. So age is not the part that matters. What matters is the amount of time that you're able to capture, right? So I think to myself, by being able to get into dentistry earlier, to be able to get into ownership earlier, to be able to start building things earlier, it gives you an opportunity to be able to capture compound interest. And really, interest is a play on words. It's an interest when it comes to financially, you're getting a gain on your initial investment. And interest also means to me as what I'm personally interested in, it compounds. Mm-hmm. Meaning that if I'm interested in dentistry, right, then that means by getting into it earlier, I'm able to commit to it earlier. Now, once I become a dentist, again, it's all about decisions. What's the difference between me graduating and waiting 10 years to do continual education versus me coming out and doing continual education in my first year?
Yeah, I think these are one of those concepts where sometimes it's really hard to conceptualize because you never really know what you've missed out on. And I'm pretty sure we might touch on it later in this show, but opportunity cost. When we talk about all of this, opportunity cost is the cost of deciding or making a decision compared to another decision. Pretty much for us being here today, we couldn't be in LA kicking it, enjoying it, right? Because we couldn't be two places at once. So the cost of us being here today is the fact that we couldn't be in LA right now. So there's a cost associated with every decision we make. The reason this may be a little bit hard to grasp is because we don't always know that cost. We can't always clearly identify at the end of the day what that cost is going to be. So I think this concept is very interesting. And just to give one more example, especially in the CPA world, they say it's much easier for you to pass the CPA right out of school, right? Because, typically, when you're a little bit older, you might have a family, you might have kids, you might have a full-time 9-to-5. You have so many obligations that even though you may be smarter than that kid coming out of school or the master's program, this kid has that compounding effect because they have just learned this information. Also, they have much more of a flexibility in their schedule. So I'm just saying all these things to say, yes, you can do it at 23, 24, or yes, you can do it at 40 years old. It's just when you can maximize the time that you have in the season that you have, you may achieve much quicker results because you took advantage of that timing.
That's a really good point. And again, we can never guarantee how much time we're going to have in a career, right? But one thing that we can try is to try to keep our window open as long as possible. Yeah. And by getting into it earlier, you have given yourself an opportunity to keep that window open for longer. Yeah. So when I'm thinking about what you're saying, it makes perfect sense because I know individuals who did move and graduate within accounting and our accountant before was, I believe, 20 years as an accountant, but never got the CPA. It would be tougher for that person to go get their CPA compared to you when you're fresh out, already understanding mentally how and what kind of questions they're going to ask, because that's what they're training you on.
Yeah.
Right. The same way with continual education. You're learning the most up-to-date ways to do things. So the sooner you get that information, the better off you are. I always tell people this, that the sooner you get good, the longer you can be good. Mm-hmm. Let me back that statement up a little bit, right? The sooner you get good, the longer you can enjoy being good. So what's the difference between getting good tomorrow versus getting good 10 years from now? That's 10 years that you could have been good.
Yeah.
Even from a financial perspective. That's the reason we say that financially you want to set yourself up with a strong foundation, especially when it comes to dental wealth, generational dental wealth, because that's the longer you get to enjoy it. By making those concrete financial decisions now, you're setting yourself up for a longer runway, right? By making sure as a dental student, you're now taking care of the most important financial decision. Understand every stage of life has its own set of decisions that you can maximize. A lot of us like to wait until basically it's a summit. It's a peak point that I have to make a correct decision. Now understand that success is a compound effect of a lot of small decisions. Yeah. And that's what this conversation is about. It's about a lot of small decisions. By first making the decision, hey, I want to go to dental school. Yeah. That's a huge decision that you made, that you want to be a part of this career path. By understanding that, hey, I want to make sure I maximize where I go to school. Number one, to be able to get the best education, but to minimize my student debt, because dentistry is the most expensive professional degree in America. It is more expensive than law school. It is more expensive than medical school. You don't believe me? I challenge you to Google it. I've done research on this. I've presented on this. It is the most expensive professional degree. So by you deciding to be a part of this profession, right, you need to do it the smart way, right? Now, when you come out of dental school, now you have a whole host of different decisions. Where are you going to spend your first year? And I've always said your first and your second year of coming out has, from what I've seen between my mentors, between my mentees and myself, are the most pivotal years of your career, because it's going to set you up. Either one, you're going to be excited and fired up about dentistry, or number two, you're going to be burnt out really quick and not really like it. I have people who we graduated with years ago, and they already saying they don't know if they even want to still be dentists. And that's probably because out of the block, the first year or two did not go as smooth as they hoped or they imagined. So understand that. How about if somebody gives up year two of being a dentist? You've already put 10 years, 8 years into becoming a dentist. You've already sunk $200,000, $400,000 into the education, all that just because of a small decision on where you're going to have your first associateship did not go well. You've given up. Now, a 20-year career never even gets to materialize because the first year went bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's true. I think decisions like we've identified is pretty much the biggest factor in compound interest, right? The day-to-day decisions make the big decisions. And I'd be a little bit remiss to not bring up, I guess, my own personal life. You know, I played Division I quarterback. We realized that we won and lost games long before the game ever started by the little decisions we made that week during practice. Let me back all the way up. That year during camp, what do we do in August to prepare for the season? Then that game week, what do we do? Did we study film? Did we watch film? Did we all show up to practice on time? Did we all leave and go home and make sure that we got back into our playbook? Did, the coaches prepare? Did the staff prepare? Did I prepare as a quarterback to make sure we go win this game? By the time the clock starts and the ball is put down, the game is won and already lost. I mean, you typically, unless you're talking about maybe a few inches, I mean, the game is already won. So I think, even in that there was a compounding effect. When we started off camp right in August, typically we started off the first game right. When we had that, we had the momentum to go into the second week and the third week. And the next thing you know, we're putting together a really good season because we started at the beginning and we made good decisions throughout the year. So, I mean, as you speak, I kind of just hear that, life is not really won and lost in maybe one or two decisions, but over time, the many decisions that you're making is going to lead to that bigger result. And it's going to continue to multiply. The interesting thing about compound interest is not addition, it's multiplication. When I was speaking to the ECU team organization, I brought up this example on compound interest. I said, would you rather get $10,000 for 30 days, or would you rather have one penny doubled for 30 days? And a lot of people said $10,000, right? Because that's That's the common, okay, give me what I know. When it was all said and done, the one penny doubled for 30 days, and I don't know the exact figure, was like 10 times the amount as if you got $10,000.
It was a few million, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was like a few $1 million difference. Why? Because we are talking here about multiplications. Decisions typically have a multiplication factor to it. So yeah.
That's a very deep statement. I mean, you just dropping that bomb and walking away from it. You got to, I mean, understand life the decisions multiply. Yeah. By you first deciding you want to go to college, you wanted to become a pre-dent. By you deciding you want to go to dental school. By you deciding you want to make sure that your first associateship really matters. By you deciding that even if you don't like the course of your career, you're about to course correct and get things back on track. That is huge. I mean, just understanding how everything plays together. Again, I think we like to, sometimes, like I always say, is that I feel like we treat our lives like it's a TV show. That like a season comes to a climactic end, and then we pick back up the next season and we have new hair and we live in a different city, and that, everything magically gets better. No, life is a compound effect. And basically our life is a grand sum total of our decisions. There are certain things that are out of our control, and we have to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
But the things that are within our control, we have to make sure we really take responsibility for them and live it up. When you said that the season was won or lost before the season even started, that has me thinking to myself exactly like when it comes to building wealth, when it comes to being okay financially and making sure you're able to now set yourself up well.
Yeah.
I believe that financially, the finance game is won or lost before you even get your first paycheck.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you went through your entire time in dental school, you went through your entire time throughout your entire career, and you can't really account for where your finances go, where it flows to, you're not really understanding of how the financial world works. And I do want to give a little latitude because as dentists, we're naturally scientists, right? And we're so hyper focused on the nuances of dentistry, as we should be, because we want to perfect our craft. But at the same time, we have to start seeing and understanding that there is a correlation between how and the way we serve and our financial freedom.
Yeah.
When we're financially free, we are free to be able to heal in the best possible way that we can. So by understanding there is a correlation between the way that we prepare, not only from a dental perspective, but from a financial perspective, and that link between understanding that my financial future is either already determined one way or another. Either I'm prepared for my financial future and I will already succeed before I even get my first paycheck, or I will just wait and hope everything pans out well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying has so much truth to it. And the reason I know that is because, every area of your life links to the next. And that's why we always say wealth, right? We never say riches or this, because we believe like emotionally, professionally, financially, mentally, all of these areas affect the next from the standpoint. They're all compounding. For example, if I'm talking to a client, a dental practice owner, he comes in and this happens pretty often, comes in 3-4 years behind on his taxes. Right now, I'm working on a case where somebody's 7 years behind on their taxes. First of all, the stress and the anxiety in knowing that you're that far behind. I mean, you get to about year 3 and you're like, I might as well just keep bearing this because it just feels like it's already over my head. So it just like, even some patients may come in and you might wonder why have they waited 20 years to fix this. They may have gotten to year 5 and realized maybe this is out of my control. They might have been afraid. So, typically, if we do get a case like, especially in the CPA world, somebody comes in that far behind on their taxes, we realize that plays a big role in their mental health, in their confidence, in the ability to even feel like that they can provide for their family and to do the best work that they can for their practice. So, versus that dental practice owner that comes in, that's on top of everything, that has all of his paperwork together, that comes in and that has questions, that's being proactive. And that person, you notice in their life, the family life is typically going well. You notice the practice and the staff and the patients that come in are typically in a good place. You notice that it's just a world of difference, right? Because of those small decisions that, they're making every day. So
that's really good. I love that you point that out because in reality, and that's the reason I'm glad you specified that when we talk about wealth, it's not just money. Money is the easiest part. That's the easiest component of wealth. As a dentist, you're going to earn enough to not starve. to be able to buy the car you want, to be able to buy the house you want. These kind of things come along with the hard work that you've already put in, that you will put in within dentistry. But now we're talking about the next level, right? Making sure that spiritually you're sound, making sure mentally you're strong. I'm a big proponent that physically, make sure you work out and take care of yourself. One of my mentors told me, what's the point of being able to hit all your financial goals if you want to, if your body is breaking down? You can't even enjoy it. Again, that's the reason we keep saying that the sooner you get good, the longer you can be good. So why wait until we're 20 years into our career to start taking our physical fitness to the next level?
Yeah.
Let's start in day one so we can enjoy a long, prosperous career as best as we possibly can. Again, like I said, certain things are out of your control, but the things that are in your control, for me personally, some of the things that I personally work on is my diet, my habits, working out, creating CEO time to mentally think, to be able to create time for my loved ones, like all these kind of things factor into what I personally view as generational dental wealth, because I'm privileged to be able to work with my wife. I'm privileged to be able to be on this podcast with my brother, and to be able to have my tribe around me on all these different times in my life, to be able to interact with all these amazing people. Honestly, I feel privileged.
Yeah.
And that's what generational dental wealth is, to be able to, what's in your control, set it up as best as possible to be able to give you the longest runway of success and wealth in the different areas of within your life.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, just putting a bow on this whole compound interest thing, the best time to start was yesterday. The next best time is today, so, no matter where you find yourself in this journey of becoming a dentist, or maybe you're a dentist, or maybe you're thinking about transitioning and doing some different things, just know, right, today is the next best opportunity to go ahead and get started. So any final thoughts to add?
So, I mean, like I always say, Kingsley, you're more than just a CPA, and I think that's what separates you from everybody else within your career. You're more than just a number counter, a bean counter, as y'all like to say. You're more of a financial therapist, because not everybody understands the link between how the emotional life, the spiritual life, the physical life, all interwoven together are sum total of your financial life.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us like to look at financial life first and try to pick off all the other areas in our lives. But I think if you truly start with the other areas in your life, if you're happy in all the other areas, the financial part is going to be the easy part. That's one that's going to flow in. That's going to take care of itself.
It's going to figure
That's
itself.
production. That's come in, do the work that's in front of you. But all the other areas in your life, once they reach a point of alignment, that's when you're really, really gearing, man. So this was a fun conversation. I appreciate everybody joining us today. This is the Generational Dental Wealth Podcast. My name is Dr. Jermaine Affetti.
My name is Kingsley Affetti, CPA.
And we'll see y'all next time.
See you next time.
Peace.
All right.